So now we bring up Chuck Berry. Now Chuck Berry is like a really, um, I guess in some way, I mean, he's kind of controversial, but he's like really, really, really significant, man. When you're looking into the cultural history of the United States, man, Chuck Berry is like that guy is like God. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think even Lennon has said that himself. He was a Brit. Keith Richards, another Brit. Chuck Berry. I mean, this part of the story is weird as hell. You got all these British guys hopping on this American blues sound. I was always fascinated by that aspect of the story. So Chuck Berry, like what, you listen to the songs now and you're kind of like, it's lost on a lot of people, as it always is. Because, guys, one of the things that's so frigging important, right? Like, and this is what I'm trying, this is why I'm bothering with these talk videos. Because, like, I feel like I don't know how the hell it happened to me, but, like, I just feel like I tapped into something when I was listening to these songs that a lot of people just, like, can't fathom. And, I want to help people like do it. I want to I want to show you like why like some of these artists are so awesome, even if their songs seem kind of goofy. And Chuck is a case where the songs can seem kind of really goofy. But what was so significant about Chuck? Well, the big thing was Chuck took the blues. Now, like we just lost B.B. King. God rest his soul. We just lost him. Now, Chuck did something very different than B.B. King though, because Chuck now, here's where this teenage element comes in, right? Because prior to Chuck Berry, there was rock and roll. The people were rocking out with the guitars. Some of those blues artists were playing awesome solos, and we see Jack White, the White Stripes. He references these old blues cats all the time. But the thing is, this is what's bizarre. Chuck takes the blues. He takes the blues form, the 12-bar blues. Every guitar player is intimate, or should be, with the 12-bar blues. And he takes that, and instead of putting, depressing, I mean, most blues songs, what is the blues? You say it's synonymous with being sad, synonymous with being depressed, even to this day. You say, oh, that kid's got the blues, he's sad. That kid's singing the blues, he's sad, so on and so forth. Now, Chuck takes the blues form, amps it up, and then he does the strangest thing in the world. Instead of writing that he was depressed over the rhythm, he writes about how happy he was. This was huge, guys. Really, it's hard to see it now, but that was big. He took it and wrote, I'm happy, and not only that, but he specifically, and this is what's so wrong, and this is when you see racism rear its ugly MFing head in the country, because Chuck receives almost, like, not nearly as much recognition as he should have received, and I feel even to this day he's kind of glossed over in the culture at large. Like, you turn on those, everybody knows Elvis, but it seems that only kind of like rock fans kind of know Chuck. Modern people, like, he's not really a household name, and that's a sign of racism. The fact that Chuck Berry's not a household name. I don't think he's a household name. Elvis Presley, without a doubt, is. So that is racist. I mean, a lot of hip hoppers will say that Elvis Presley appropriated a black art form. Yeah, that's true. He did. He took. But that's a different argument. I don't want to get into that because that's a really tricky spot. I want to discuss instead Chuck right now. And so we see that Chuck Berry takes the blues and he starts writing these happy lyrics over it. He writes about how he's going to, like, the diner. He writes about how he's going to the restaurant, how he can't stand school. He's really writing for, like, a predominantly white audience, And they bought it up. They ate it up. And there's, like, reports, I suppose, that Chuck was going around the country trying to get shows, and like people would say like, "Hey, you're not Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry is white." And it was a big weird dilemma. But of course, he couldn't have been any different than the actual grandfathers of the blues, who obviously are Robert Johnson, Charlie Patton, Muddy Waters, B.B. King would be in that list. Oh God, those blues guys. There's hundreds of them, man. They were all over the place, and they were seriously. And this is what's so weird about punk rock, the punk rock movement that made no sense to me, was punk rock totally ignores the existence of the blues, and yet those black blues guys were like the first punks. Man, they were living on the fringes. Nobody was listening to that. That was, they were strictly, I would imagine, working within, black neighborhoods, black communities, so on and so forth. So very huge parallels with hip hop, the early blues, and even the hip hop culture, from what I can see, and from a lot of people I can see, they don't acknowledge the blues at all, and that's really stupid because it's a pretty big aspect of American culture, and many people have been known to say that the blues is actually the perhaps only art form that we Americans have ever created, because we haven't really created. I mean, a lot of, if you really think about it, all the art forms that we're utilizing here were created in, back in Europe or somewhere else, in Asia or something, in the old world. And that's another very important thing to remember, is that you can't forget that, this is still the new world. And I think a lot of youths just don't even take that into account these days, and they don't understand, like, what does it mean to be from the new world versus the old world. Well, guys, there is a pretty big difference, and it does play into the music really heavily. I mean, we're going to take a step back now, actually, and we're going to look at the Brits, and we're going to try to say, we're going to look at that in the next video. And it's ridiculous, but for you, it's just 1 second. Hold on. So, we were discussing the Brits, and I was making some comments about old world versus new world, a fact which, in my opinion, I didn't really think that meant anything as a kid. I certainly didn't think that meant anything. I mean, you kind of think, hey, it's 2015, you know what I'm saying? Like, the old world, new world, but come on, it's over. There's just old terms used in the history books, but my friends, you see it when you listen to the songs. I swear you see it, and I'm going to prove to you. I'm going to give you evidence right now why you see it, and this is why, okay? Because when you look, let us go back now. We're jumping past Elvis, okay? We're jumping out of the 50s, all right? We're going into the 1960s now. We're going to visit the big bands that were big during the 60s. Well, guys, when I mentioned in earlier in this video, I mentioned, who are the trendy bands that those kids rock on their t-shirts these days that we reference all the time? Well, it's Zeppelin, it's The Who, it's Pink Floyd, it's, who else? The Beatles, man. The Beatles. The Rolling Stones. All right, I just mentioned 5 bands. Zeppelin, The Who, The Beatles, The Stones. The Kinks. The Kinks are another huge 60s rock act. Jesus, who else was there? I mean, there was... and when you really think about it, guys, every one of them... I'll slow down, I'm sorry. Excuse-moi. You think of all those bands... I mean, look, I'm going to look at on Spotify right now, so we type in the Kinks, and let's see who they recommend as a similar artist, just so I can get some more names for you. All right, you got The Who, of course, the Beatles, the Stones, the Faces. The Faces where Rod Stewart's at. Well, Rod Stewart is a Brit. The Animals. Animals, let's see, I'm pretty sure, originating from England. Yeah, they were from England. What's going on here? Every friggin' band is from England. Now, here's some of the other related bands that they're going to give us. Okay, the Byrds, of course, Clapton, Cream. Again, guys, every single one of these people. Now, maybe some Brits are watching this, but I'm talking also to Americans. And to my fellow Americans, what the hell is this bull? Almost every band is a goddamn Brit. It's absolutely crazy. And the only bands I'm seeing that are popping out right now that they're recommending me that are American in this list is Canned Heat. Guys, nobody knows who Canned Heat is. They were great. You know what I'm saying? They had that real country feel to them. It's Canned Heat. Now, you might say, and you might throw in, that there were some other bands that was around in the 60s that were from America. Who? Who the hell was it? There was nobody. The only ones who really were, the only shining star we really had, of course, Dylan. But again, guys, he's out of this category. He wasn't actually a rock and roll. In a way, he wasn't really even a rock artist, and he certainly wasn't a band. The Doors. That's why the... Wait, 1 second.